Hi there, Data Storytellers. It's Paul Capon here, and today I'm with Xiong Liu, who's the Director of Data Science and AI at Novartis. Hi, Xiong. Great to have you with us.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Just to start with, tell us a bit about yourself in your own words. You know, your background, your roles, your passions about data, and just give us a bit of a flavor as to who you are to start with.
Yeah, sure. So before I start, I'd like to put a disclaimer. So the views expressed are my own, not that of Novartis. I have a long journey of data science and AI in biomedicine. So I got a PhD in information science from the University of Pittsburgh, and then postdoctoral training in bioinformatics from Johns Hopkins University. After that, I went to a small AI company where I served as principal investigator for government-sponsored projects in data mining, text mining, and biomedical applications. And then about 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to join Eli Lilly company and entered the pharmaceutical industry, where I researched on the research informatics. And later on, as a company started to branding the data science, I started to focus more on data science, especially machine learning and natural language processing. And more recently, I joined Novartis, where I lead AI and data efforts to empower the pharma value chain from the early discovery to clinical trials and through real-world evidence and outcomes research. So you see, I have background in both data and also biomedicine. So I'm glad I have the opportunity to serve the patients and the pharmaceutical industry using data and AI.
Interesting. And I know that R&D, real world analytics, is something that's really getting a lot of attention at the moment, especially in the last couple of years or so. But before we get into all of that, what you mentioned that this kind of evolved from a program into a data science function, and it has been doing that over the last couple of years or so. Yeah. Why do you enjoy working with data and analytics, and specifically in the pharmaceutical industry, let's say?
Yeah, yeah, when it goes to the pharmaceutical industry, I would start with the general industry trend, right? So I can start with my own experience. So when I was in graduate school, we studied machine learning, data mining, etc. But in the past decade, you see there's a strong momentum in the deep learning field with the all kinds of deep learning algorithms, theories, and also the GPU, cloud, etc. And also on the biotechnology side, I can also see a lot of new technologies booming. When I was in graduate school, when we studied the gene expression, it's based on microarray data. But nowadays, people talk about next generation sequencing, genome editing, etc. So you can see that on data and technology sides, we are able to generate a lot of data and using algorithms to learn new visions. And this happens across industry everywhere. And pharmaceutical is also one of them. I can see, the pharmaceutical industry is kind of very special and interesting. Usually, it's very lengthy and costly process. People usually say it takes more than 10 years and over $1 billion to launch a new medicine to the market. And the success rate is relatively low. It's just about 10%. Then people start thinking, how could we improve the success rate? How can we improve the efficiency, etc. Then some people think from the science perspective, some think from the clinical perspective. And with the AI booming, obviously, we all think about from the computation, data, AI perspective, how could we improve the whole pharmaceutical research process, R&D process. I can deep dive into this a lot, but briefly, then people start to think, what are the, from the computational side, there are some very interesting frameworks. So for example, there's one study from AstraZeneca. So they look at their internal pipeline and found that improving the scientific understanding of the molecules does improve the success rate. And also they summarize that into 5 key factors, which includes the right target, right tissue, right safety, right patients, and the right commercial strategy. So obviously, AI and data and AI could help either discover or improve every of those key factors. But for me, I would like to simplify this into 3 natural stages of drug development, which includes the early discovery and clinical research, and also the real-world evidence. So for the early discovery, it means anything that happens before the first human dosage. The clinical trials, meaning the drug is being tested on human bodies to test its safety and efficacy. And when the drug is approved, it goes to the market. Doctors will prescribe that to a lot of more patients in the real world data. Now, how is the safety and efficacy profile like? Then this is all falls into the real world evidence and outcomes research. Obviously, AI could play a key role in each of that. I could give more details if time permits. Yeah.
Awesome. And that was a really good breakdown. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And actually, I think what you're talking about there is essentially data-driven transformation, data-driven business transformation, specifically from an end-to-end R&D perspective. And we hear this word a lot, data-driven. Okay, so how would you define data-drivenness in a clinical context?
Yeah, the data-driven, either from science perspective or a clinical perspectives. So let me start with some examples. It might give more concrete details. So, for example, in early discovery, it includes a lot of steps as well, such as target identification and validation. Basically, finding the right protein targets in the human body that are disease related or disease causing. So we want to use molecules to intervent those target proteins in order to achieve therapeutic effects. So during this process, there's a lot of experimental data being generated, including genomics, including proteomics, and also a lot of scientific findings are being published in the literature. So now if we think about data-driven, a lot of good places to start with is to go to the literature, go to the scientific conferences, to using natural language processing and machine learning to extract key information about gene-disease relationships, gene-disease drug relationships, etc. And then combine this knowledge with genomics, proteomics, all kinds of omics to build a huge network. Then you can apply all kinds of AI algorithms, graph neural networks, Bayesian networks to prioritize the targets so that it could more efficiently help you define and find those novel targets meeting your therapeutic needs. So that's just one example of data-driven, which is actually already happening across the industry. And also when it goes to the clinical, then a key aspect is how do we find the right patients, right? Then there's a lot of research being done using data science, trying to compare the study protocols with the electronic health records of the patients. And we can, using AI, to find a lot of information about the demographic, about the disease history, about the prior treatment history, and also the clinical measures of the patients so that we can find the right patients for all kinds of clinical studies. So these are kind of the real examples of a data-driven approach. And also data is also fundamentally changing the way how clinical trials being conducted. Previously, for example, patients need to go to the clinical sites, and then the investigators as sites need to collect data and do the analysis, do the manual measures, etc., to collect the data. And now with the booming of digital health, then a lot of things could happening remotely, of course, with the regulatory approval and also the consent from the patients. So now people are talking about smart homes. You can actually turn your homes into a clinical research sites, right, with all kinds of wearables. So this is another example about how data and technology are fundamentally changing the way we conduct clinical research. So yeah, so these are some examples of data-driven practice or models. Yeah.
And by definition, you see these roles and these opportunities coming up for big organizations in the functions you said. You mentioned clinical specifically and real world analytics, right? These new technologies and these new opportunities. Where do you see the biggest opportunities for ambitious companies and ambitious data leaders today?
Yeah. So okay. So this goes to the topic of transformational leadership, right? I think there are several key factors. To me, I think first is the vision, and second is inspiration, and the third is about execution. So let me expand. If we talk about the transformation versus the transaction. So meaning is not just getting things done on time, on a budget, but also bring big ideas to the current practice to gain significant improvement in terms of efficiency, scientific understanding, customer relationships, etc. It's the spectrum. So to me, I think then we need the big ideas, from the academic, from the industry, from the startup companies, etc. So in order for a leader to have those kind of aspects, I think obviously we need to have the knowledge, experience, but also we need to be ready for scientific challenges, intellectual challenges. We need to challenge ourselves and also the current practice. How could we become better? So yeah, so this is a big part of the being a visionary leadership. Okay, and second is about the inspiration. Obviously, we need a team and a community to make those big visions become reality. So I know a lot of inspirational leaders. They give very nice speeches, motivate people. I really admire that. I think communication is a very key factor to connecting people. Bring people together to achieve bigger mission. But also, I think the intellectual stimulation is also very important for inspiration, especially when those young graduates, young minds, when they enter the industry, they become the next generation workforce. Then we wanted to be able to intellectually stimulate their thinkings, to bring their knowledge, talents into the current challenges, right? So this is the kind of inspiration part. And then goes to the execution part. I think this is very important because in order to achieve this vision, you have the ideas, you have teams, but you also need strategists, to make things happen, right? So to me, I think for leaders, then I think being a role model is really important because people are watching you, and also you wanted to be transformational, and you wanted to bring contributions to the community, to empower the teams and also all kinds of stakeholders and customers. Then I mean, being a role model, meaning, for example, if you do data science and you bring a new ideas, then at least you should go through the exercises yourself. Then what are the possible approaches, and what are the pros and cons, and what are early signs of success, right? We have to be clear about those things, right? So then when we bring those things on the table, then it's very much more convenient to communicate and convincing people. And also another perspective is about, I think, is about interest alignment. We need to align personal interests with the organizational or team interests, because people have different backgrounds, they have different expertise. But a good thing is that nowadays data science is a team sport, right? Meaning everybody could play an effective role. So we need to have a very clear strategies how we align personal strength, interests with the organization and team's strength. If we're able to do that, then I believe obviously people will be motivated to bring their best to the work and make the best contributions. So these are some aspects of execution and the big picture of being inspirational and transformational. Yeah.
Yeah, you've given me a ton of stuff to work with there. So let's break that down. And one of the first things you said there was a transactional transformation, and this is something that my co-founder Laszlo and I were talking about just earlier this week. The word transform, actually, it's the word trans means on the other side of. It's an old Latin word, and form comes from an old French word, forme, which means image or likeness. So what you're actually trying to do with specifically a data-driven transformation is get from one form, which is a legacy company that's been around for many years with many specific processes and a specific culture, and change that model, that likeness, that image into get to the other side of that. That's what the word transform means when you break it specifically down. So, and you mentioned this transactional transformation, which I thought was really interesting because it uses both of those trans prefixes, which is on the other side of. So with the word transactional, for example, what you're talking about there is just simply moving from one stage to another. But you hit the nail on the head because it isn't just about transaction at all. And you mentioned this because we're working with people, we're not working with robots. We're working with people who have feelings and emotions, and they have particular things that drive them. And you mentioned that you need to be a role model for and have that intellectual stimulation was the word you used, I think. And I really, really like that. And specifically, let's talk about the role model piece as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, when it comes to being that role model, what do you think that how does one fit into that? Or if you look at, for example, outside of your company or your industry, and you see like a chief data officer, what kind of role model do you think that they should be for data-driven business transformation?
Well, I think first is have that spirit. Knowing that data and technology is booming, and there's that can-do spirit. I think is very important. Because many times when you bring visions on the table, then is this doable? Then the role model needs to find a good niche and also need to be have that kind of can-do spirit to carry on things. I think that's very important, and also that's from the bigger perspective, right? But also, I want to emphasize small is also very important. Small meaning like you pay attention to details, doing concrete tasks and generate evidences. Obviously, every aspects we to do things effectively, we need a team, right? But also, if we break down the data science projects or ideas into pieces, then it could becomes very detailed. So, for example, if you wanted to transform how clinical research is being done, there are all kinds of paradigms, models, right? And if you talk about digital health, there are all kinds of sensors, wearables, invisibles, all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So being a role model, I think when you embracing those ideas, you should deep dive into those ideas and get to know the landscape, to know what is already possible today, what might be the next, low-hanging fruits. So we have to think very deep to those tiny, small things, so that when you, communicate with people or when you collaborate with people, then people will feel that, they will appreciate that. So I think these are just some examples of being a role model, but there's tons more,
Absolutely. And I think you're in a really interesting position because your background is, and your theoretical background, your academic background is bioinformatics and clinical, but you've actually become this data leader. So my next question is, how do you work with people who are on each side of the camp? For example, you're going to be working with people who are strictly in the business camp. And I'm sure you work and you're very familiar with people who are just in the clinical camp. So you kind of sit at the intersection of business and clinical. How do you reconcile those, and how do you bring the clinical into the business and the business into the clinical in that sense?
Yeah, I think I love that question. Yeah, nowadays, technology is booming, but also on the business side, is a lot of new paradigms, new challenges, right? Then how do we reconcile those two sides? How do we effectively applying the technologies into the business settings? So I think there are many different perspectives. So for me, I like to connect with people from different backgrounds. So for example, if we think about a team's perspective, right, then I really love to collaborate with domain experts. Domain experts, they are able to articulate details about and challenges in their language, either in scientific language if they're basic science researchers, or in the clinical language if they do clinical research, right? But we as a data and computational scientists, we speak language in mathematics, in machine learning, AI, this kind of programming languages, right? And then I think one way is to how we team up with those domain experts so that we enrich each other. So I always love work with domain experts, and also bring together the domain expert piece and also the computational aspects so that the two sides can achieve the maximum outcome. So that is one aspect. Yeah.
Interesting. And from that perspective, then, if you have leaders on your team and in your vertical who, they're clinical by trade, but they want to learn more about data analytics, how would you advise those people to get more influence with the business side of things? Because there is that pull from the business of we want to be more data driven, but how do you advise those people who want to push that agenda further?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. This goes to some other types of relationships. There's up management support is also very important. You wanted to get organizational support and the leader support for your initiatives. Then people talk about managing up. Then this is about you have a very nice business proposals, and you are able to do the business pitch, to do the idea pitch, to quickly get the ideas across and get feedbacks, right? And also, I think for another perspective is also, I heard people saying that all the scientists, researchers, data practitioners, we need to form a network of mentors. So meaning those people, they are more experienced, they could give you very nice suggestions and feedback, right? So, and I mean, a network of mentors is very important. You are not limited to just one or two mentors, but you have a huge network with all kinds of domain experts, data experts, academic and industry experts. You connect with them, right? So this is prepare you and create you a very nice environment. You get support and feedback very timely from people, right? And then also you need to connect with your peers. Those people, they are not necessarily working day to day with you, but they are your peers. And if you form a strong network with them, often you get very surprising results. For example, they could, become the advocates for each other. For example, they know you're working on some interesting ideas. When next time they came across some new people in those areas, they would, introduce you. So I often get those kind of introductory emails from people, and surprisingly, I get to know new people and new customers, and from there I can even derive some new projects to extend, the ideas and get more impactful results. And also, then when it goes to the teams, and then again, what I mentioned about being able to align individual team members' interests with the project interests, with the the portfolio interests. I think that's also very important. Also needs a lot of interaction, communication. So I would say the keyword is a network to get ideas, get feedback is very important. Yeah.
Interesting. And actually what I think you're alluding to there is breaking down the silos. So rather than have a clinical data team and an early research team and a real world data team and then a sales team and then a marketing team, what you're actually, the end state that everyone wants to be in is have an end-to-end data enterprise. So what you're kind of alluding to there is storytelling, right? It's how can I create this compelling message, and how can I convey this compelling message to people who might not be bought in my company, which is, it's an old company. Like many other companies out there, they're not Apple, they're not Facebook, they're not inherently data driven. So what are some of the skills that you use in terms of conveying that message across the business?
Okay, so this is about how to influence and get support and convincing key stakeholders, right? I think, interestingly, I think this is kind of related to your proposal writing. For myself, as I mentioned, I stayed at a small AI company before, where a big chunk of my work is to come up with business proposals, interact with my customers in the government agencies. I think, yeah, so I gained a lot of experiences and observations there. I think, the first, we need to come up with a very strong proposal, right? So the proposal is like, okay, now this is a current situation either the industry is facing or your company is facing, right? And you want to bring this to the next stage, to be transformational, right? And then what is your main objectives, right? You need to be able to articulate objective 1 to 3, and on each objective, we need to break down that into doable tasks, right? Task 1 to 3, right? So then I would say this is kind of a very template a way to capture ideas. So I would encourage people whenever you want to be bring up new ideas, want to create projects, you start with those kind of proposal writing, right? It doesn't mean you write things rigorously, but you from your mindset, you need to have this kind of frameworks, right? And then second, you need to be able to pitch your ideas to the audience, to the right audience, right? So sometimes, this depends, right? Sometimes for academic researchers, their audience is probably program officers from the government agencies or some, potential funders, right? And for startups, you need to, audience might be the venture capitals, and your as a company or within us inside a company. So your audience could be those up management who could sponsor you, who could fund you, right? So you should be able to ready to, in very short period of time, like I see people do 1 minute pitch, 3-minute pitch, elevator talks, right, to get ideas across. So I think those kind of things are very challenging and interesting, but also need a lot of time to practice. So we have to be prepared with the good content in a proposal format, and should be able to get across the proposal to the right audience in a timely fashion, get their feedbacks. Yeah.
And I think it's obviously, of course, important to have the right information and be prepared and go in for that. How important do you think things like soft skills are, like communication, influence, and persuasion, are in the ability to get these pitches across, let's say?
Yeah, I think good question. I think interpersonal communication or getting personal is really, I would think, is a piece of art. The soft skills, how you interact with people, either face-to-face or remotely, these are very challenging. So I myself have been reflecting on this as well. I think probably individualized attention might be the key, because your audience, they have coming from different backgrounds. But I think you should be able to tell what is their, focus, where their interest lies, right? So if you are able to capture that, individual differences, then you can apply strategies about the individualized attention. So for example, if you are coaching a team, right, you have some people just graduate from some college or graduate school, right? Then those people, they really have a very curious curiosity mind, right? And they want to learn about why data is useful in these business settings. Basically, they want to learn a little bit more about the business settings, how their talents could plug in. So in those scenarios, it could be like more detailed, more hands-on. But but if you are working with a very experienced team members, they are kind of basically have tons of years of experience. They're kind of independent researchers, right? So in those scenarios, you don't want to micromanage them, but instead you want to create environment to give timely feedbacks to ensure that individual interests is aligned with the bigger project and the team interests. And if you could do that, I think the person would be very happy and obviously will contribute very positively to the whole portfolio, right? So yeah, it really depends. And also when you talk to your peers are different background, right? And we talk to your managements, right? And your sponsors, right? They are all different, right? So I think being able to capture the individual difference, their interests and your own interests, and how to align all kinds of interests very quickly to have an effective communication, I think that's a good starting point. And I think everyone should start exercising themselves. Yeah.
And we've had some good advice from you about the kind of skills and the kind of ideas that we need to profess as business leaders. What role did these skills play in your success as a professional during your career? Whether it was in your previous roles or your current role. Can you tell us about some times that actually these made significant difference to, let's say, buy-in or stakeholder engagement or breaking down silos or the culture pieces, anything like that?
So do you mean the challenges or the successful stories? I guess you want to
both. No, actually, we like both. We like success stories because it showcases the best. We like times that it was tough because it shows common pitfalls, what to avoid as well. So, the floor is yours.
Okay. I think the successful stories I had is about being able to apply those transformation ideas to the industry scenarios. So, for example, I'm sorry, I have to go to some examples I experienced myself, right? So nowadays, in every pharma, there's a medical affairs teams. They are the people who are kind of serving as the bridges between the patients, researchers, doctors. They are kind of the linkers of different parties, right? So usually the old practice is that when they go use a lot of site visits, manual interactions, meaning like you need to physically visit doctors, you go to different conferences, meeting experts, etc. Right? And but now I think then I was proposing using the data science approach, data-driven approach instead of a purely human-driven approach. So meaning that we could harvest a lot of existing data, private data, putting things all together, then we apply data mining, text mining, machine learning on top of that. Then we can quickly prioritize the interests. So, for example, thought leaders, novel targets, novel molecules, etc. Right? So you can quickly using this data and AI to generate those kind of candidates, right? And then you show this to people, and then people have different reactions. Some people will say, wow, you got something I never thought it was there. Maybe I read pieces of paper, I might hit it someday, but you are now holistically putting all the knowledge on the table, right? So those are the kind of yearly advocates for you. They can quickly take your results and then apply those results. And so that they say, oh, it saves me a lot of time visiting doctors and visiting key opinion leaders, right? And the same thing happens with the external innovation teams when they're trying to find the promising collaborators, right? Then if you are able to pinpoint them where the those talents, those things of interest lies, then they could be appreciate you, right? So I think in this way we are transforming the mainly manual human approach into a AI empowered approach. So obviously efficiency and the outcome would be better because you could those solutions could potentially not possible without with just human approach, right? So you can see this as a power. But challenges, I would say again, I think many challenges. I'm also thinking about the challenges from the data and AI, the whole perspective, right? I think we talk about the data as silos, it's a challenge, right? Then, for example, if you want to be data-driven, if you don't have the data, right? Or if you wanted to build machine learning models, you don't have any labeled data, then what are you going to do, right? Then obviously, and now every organization start to have a data organization, and I see a good trend is that people start to share data within the organization, outside the organization. So it's a very healthy environment right now. And then the challenge is about the AI model itself, right? Then how do we translate the business problem into AI problem? Because if we are not able to translate business problem into AI problem, we are not able to harvest the real power of AI. So for example, if you want to find novel molecules, novel targets, right? If you're not able to define the novelty in computer language, then how could you build an AI model for that, right? So this obviously needs a domain experts and data scientists, they come together to define the problem. And then the challenge I saw is about the algorithms perspective. People often get a conception that, especially the general public, when they think about AI, they thought, okay, now you got a really smart robot which can, solve all the problems you might have, could replace humans. But they neglect the fact that many nowadays AI algorithms, have limitations. For example, from performance perspective, no AI algorithms are 100%, right? Because you statistics patterns to find those trends, build models. So this is not going to be 100%. And also there are going to be bias, right? If your data is biased and your problem is biased, then how could you, build an effective model, right? So then this obviously goes to how we can, fundamentally improve the AI, the algorithms we have. How do we, build more accurate models, less biased models, etc. Right? These are the obviously challenges. And also another challenge I think is about model deployment or data deployment, right? So now you have good data, you have good models. You want to embed those things into daily activities of the company or of a team, right? So and then usually I found there's some challenge. I mean, if we're using simple engineering mindset, you would think, oh, things just plug and you click a button, they just run, right? But in reality, it's not like that. For example, you could get the challenges from the very beginning when you deploy a model. Then people say, okay, I don't understand the model. I don't know the input and outputs, right? So sometimes it's related to the UI UX problems, but sometimes it's related to the model might not be that practical. People cannot, right? So in those scenarios, you have to resolve those issues before you deploy your models, right? I'm not talking about IT challenges, because nowadays there's a lot of computing power, a lot of, cloud storage, etc. So this is less challenging, but the challenge is right about really what's the real value of data model and how to make people love to embrace that. And also, again, this is related to the soft skills in the communication skills to let people understand your model, because sometimes the people's attitudes is quite interesting. Data AI is really flexible, right? If we really understand it, understand the problem, understand the nature of the business, we can always be better, right? We can build baseline models, and then we can always be better in the near future. But if people are not understanding you, all the interpersonal communication gets stuck, right? Then people don't want to pursue, right? They would say, oh, okay, this model is not working. Data is not working. They lose interest to listen to you and work with you, right? Right. But instead, if you have different attitudes from people, they say, oh, okay, now this is interesting. This is better than random guess. This is better than what I manually did before, because you have some new findings, new ideas, right? Bring on the table. Then they love to interact with you, right? So many times these kind of scenarios, how to win people's positive attitudes is a state of the art. It's a piece of art. It's challenging. But also from another perspective, I see one way to solve the challenge. You need to find advocates, right? Because theoretically, when you work on projects, right, you have players on the projects, right? You have stakeholders, you have customers. you have team members, etc. Some things you couldn't change, right? But sometimes things could be changed. For example, you could choose to collaborate with certain types of people with the same kind of mindset with you. Those would make things much easier because this will help you to generate positive results very quickly. And then those people, customers, they can speak for you. Then the products speak for you, right? Then in this way, you can get attractions indirectly from people you are not necessarily directly working with, right? So in this perspective, then if you are able to pick smartly about your collaborators, like your project team members, because this way you really work very effectively towards the end results, and then let the results speak for you. So this is one way to overcome, the challenges of interpersonal communication.
Yeah, and you touch on pretty much the heart and soul of what we do here, which is data on its surface. As you said, with IT systems, it looks very technical. It looks like a science. It looks like you can adapt and apply it very algorithmically, very systematically. But actually, when you dig a little bit deeper under the surface, data analytics buy-in and business transformation in this context is actually way more of an art than a science. And this is where the soft skills and all that kind of stuff playing. Like with IT and cloud computing, that's the technical side. That's the process orientated side. But actually, when you look at the creative side, there's so much you can do with data analytics. And a big theme about everything you just said is kind of trust in AI, right? So what are some of the best questions that you ask in terms of building trust with key stakeholders and establishing a relationship? Again, you can talk about it from a clinical context because that's what you're working in. But how would you go about doing that?
Key stakeholders, right? I think that's a very interesting question, but also very broad. I think understanding your key stakeholders is probably the first step, right? Understanding their business, their problems, and also importantly to understanding the personal flavor, right? I mean, we all do science, we all do technology, but people, their focus somehow different, right? Again, it goes to what I mentioned, individualized attention, right? Because if you trust the stakeholders could work with you very effectively to achieve the best results, then the trust is the first thing you need to have, right? Trust people, and then try to understand them, and then from there you can tell, okay, to what extent you could do. I do think sometimes there are limitations. For example, from either side or both sides, sometimes you end up the collaboration, the scope might not be that fruitful. I think it's also important to realize this in the very beginning, because it's impact how much you expect, right? And sometimes from a certain collaborators, that you will achieve a lot, right? You can get this kind of feeling. So in those sense, you should also appreciate opportunities of working with those kind of people. So I don't think there's a general rule, but I think really trusting people, understanding them, and realize how much what to expect or what not to expect, right, is very important. And then we all need to respect people, right? So in my previous company, then there's a company culture about being about excellence, about integrity, and also about respecting people, right? So I would say no matter you end up with a very fruitful collaboration or not, right? We should always respect people and respect their ideas. I know there could be differences in minds, in attitudes, in ways we communicate. So if we have this kind of open-minded attitude, I think we are able to achieve a more and can go further. Yeah.
Interesting. And look, it's been a really interesting conversation. I just have a couple more questions for you. But we mentioned that this is more of an art than a science, and we can kind of nail that down. How intentional are you when it comes to actually a specific roadmap for data science and AI transformation? Talking more about the science side down behind it. Do you have a system in place that helps you engage with the team and interact and get the execution side down?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I would say some projects they your projects they have different maturity level, right? Some projects I had were quite influential. So, for example, in my previous roles, I have won multiple internal innovation awards. So these are not just based on ideas, but also based on the business impact, right? So, for example, we built a machine learning and natural language processing pipelines, right? It's pipelines nowadays. It's meaning like end-to-end systems. It does not necessarily mean fully automatic. There's human interventions in between, but the system. The idea is that it goes from the data collection. So now I like to probably using some IT language. People talk about a tiered architecture, right? Then in the bottom you have the data source and the data management layer, right? And then on top you have analytics or data processing layer, and on top you have a presentation layer. So I used to have a lot of successful projects which have accomplished those kind of steps and achieved and everything packed into a working products or prototypes, and now people starting to using that. So for example, in finding the novel targets, novel molecules, we have systems to integrate all kinds of textual information, genomics information. Then we have also some causal related models like Bayesian networks to prioritize things of interest. And we have presentation layer, the visualizations, the simple ways kind of dashboards, right? To visualize those key findings in a rank ordered way based on the evidence, right? Then people, when they examine the list, for example, the novel molecules, novel targets of key opinion leaders, they can just click on each records, then they can see all the evidences and also the scores ranked by AI algorithms. They are able to see this kind of a list, right? Those things is quite powerful because many times it's a kind of a human needs to do a lot of work. They have to do reading papers, do experiments, put things together. They go to the field, they go to conference. Usually it's happening like that way, right? But with these kind of systems, you're ahead of time and knowing the field. Now you can plan your more targeted actions, next steps. For example, how do you engage the companies behind the novel molecules? How do you engage thought leaders with expertise you're looking for your new product launch, etc.? So you can go ahead to plan your next steps. Then you can see a kind of a step further than your peers, right? So I would say this kind of systems would be wonderful, and I have experience in that. And also for exploration projects, I also have some experience in that. So those things are a little harder to measure success because it's explorational. For example, you wanted to find new therapies to treat a certain type of cancer, right? There's oncology. There's many new therapies, new modalities happening, every day. And but how do you find your unique position to propose new therapies? I think that's very challenging, right? You can, so for example, if we talk about the tumor growth, right? The metastatic cancer is very challenging. It's very devastating to patients and families. But then how do you find a unique angle from the science perspective, like a mechanism of the disease and the mechanism of actions for your proposed molecules, etc. Think from this perspective. It's very challenging. Of course, it needs to be data-driven, but many times it's a science-driven, right? If you, for example, you want to know you want to track the activities of your tumor cells, cancer cells at every stage of their progression. Previously, it's very hard to do, but nowadays with the like a single cell omics, those kind of technology, spatial omics, you start able to get those kind of capabilities to look inside those tumor cells or your immune cells, etc. So those things that depend on the science and technology at once. It's not just about yourself, right? So in those scenarios, I would say they are kind of exploration nature, but I always love to tackle those kind of problems as well, because that's a future trend. You can imagine several years down the road or decades down the road, you sooner or later you are able to have those kind of technologies. You are able to get those kind of data, right? Then again, you wanted to use this data. Then how do you use, right? Then you start building course, etc. You can think ahead of time, and don't be afraid about failure, right? Because those things have this kind of risk by nature, right? But just embrace ideas and try best yourselves, but also appreciate what's happening around you in the field. Be humble, be excited. Yeah, I think that's a message. Yeah.
And really interesting stuff. It's been a really interesting podcast. Lots of great insights. Last question. So you have a job title that's been given to you by Novartis. You have a perception of the way that people in the business perceive your role. How do you see your role? What would you, if you had to dial your role into, a couple of words, what would those be? Are you a transformation leader? Are you a clinical transformation leader? What would that sound like in your own words?
Yeah, I would say two paths, right? One is your day-to-day job. This you need to accomplish your roles, which this is kind of the I would say the mandate part of your role, right? Those are things you need to do, right? But also there's another part. I really love the culture at Novartis. People call it unbossed cultural environment. So it doesn't mean you don't have a boss, but meaning you are still able to have the freedom to explore ideas that you can self-define your innovation, your projects, right? And also previously at Lilly, I have very nice mentors and managers. They even give me some numbers saying that if you are doing innovation, work, 20% of your time should be devoted to those innovation. So meaning those 20% does not need to be directly related to what you day-to-day job, but it has to be from your own inspiration, what you see is important to patients, to the field, and go ahead, do it, and collaborate with people that you thought necessarily that you want to connect, right? So define your own innovation projects. And many times you get success from those innovation projects. You got attention, you got impact. This could be transformed to your formal day-to-day tasks, right? So that's kind of very interesting as well. So I would say always be responsible for the task assigned to you, but also be innovation. Try to bring innovation to yourself, to a team, to your organization. Play your role. Yeah.
Well, Xiong, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been really great having you, and some really interesting answers there. Hopefully we can work together again soon.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me.